This is Gabriel, custodian of Watchman Privacy. I know why you're here. You're looking to escape the technocratic apparatuses that you see slowly enveloping you and restraining your freedom. For the fundamentals of privacy, you should start by visiting escapethetechnocracy.com to see my video tutorials, books, and other resources for getting off the surveillance grid. Watchman Privacy and Escape the Technocracy are leading the fight for privacy, and unlike just about any other show, we practice what we preach. Private payment options, no threat modeling, no statist or collectivist solutions, and no sponsors, ever. You know what that means? It means we can speak the unmitigated truth as we see it. Your support alone determines the future of this show. Go support you and me at escapethetechnocracy.com. Welcome to Watchman Privacy Torchlight Chats, where we discuss things that interest us in the realm of technology and tyranny. Just be warned, this is classified information for your ears only. I'm joined, as always, with Urban. Urban, how's it going?
Yeah, it's going great. Thanks for inviting me.
Yep. And so in this episode, we're going to take a little bit of a snapshot, a little bit of a peek under the curtain of the weirder parts of the internet and some of the things that you can find, especially things that you can buy. As is the title of this episode, just to give people an idea of what we'll be discussing, we're going to discuss the weird world of buying usernames and why that is so important, and all the bizarre and sometimes terrible things that happen in the world of buying usernames, which are quite the commodity on the internet. We might discuss things such as Wikipedia accounts. We might discuss things such as fake engagement and followers. Urban's going to share his experience of people reaching out to him about scammy NFTs. And we're going to discuss some of the scams that you'll find on places like Telegram. So it's going to be an interesting episode and very useful, obviously. We'll discuss some lessons that we've learned along the way at the end. So, Urban, let's start with the title of this particular episode, which is this bizarre world of buying usernames. Just when I say something like that, what comes to mind? Just give the audience a sense of this wacky world.
Imagine you have a rare username. Maybe you were one of the first people who used some kind of new social media. Maybe you were the fifth to open an account on Twitter or similar, could be Instagram, could be anything. And then you have a very specific username, very short, very cool. And there is this kind of, OG vibe, like original, one of the first user. Maybe you don't even use the platform that much, but you enjoy this status that it gives you, and it's kind of interesting. Now, of course, you know about the danger of internet, right? You're not new to this world, so you lock down your account, you enable 2FA, you put a strong password, you put a unique email address, and every day you kind of laugh and dismiss people who want your precious username. And of course, there is no way they can get it, right? Everything is secured. You enable all the protection you could imagine. And you know that you should not click on any link that those people. And every day, like a ticker, you get better and better offer, more money, a simpler path, Just give up this username. Just let us use it, right? And you refuse. And then suddenly, when you are sleeping, your phone is ringing. There is a buzzing noise. You read the notification. You have been logged out of your precious account. You can't believe it. You scramble. You turn on your phone. You panic. How could it be? This might be a mistake, right? Say, this is impossible. You open your computer. You are sweating. While the computer is booting, you try to see which email. Maybe one day you failed. Maybe you clicked on something. But there is nothing. No email, no notification, just that you're logged out. So you reach your computer, you enter your email, and you're logged in. What a relief. It worked. However, you notice that now your precious username is completely different and someone else is using. Now, what I describe, if it doesn't sound like some kind of, shivering down your spine, I want you to imagine that this is something that happens way more often than we think. And the reason why we don't hear that much about it is because, frankly speaking, most people don't really care that much about a username. And therefore, when they lose it, most of the time, they might not have maybe they also lose their followers. Maybe they lose their way to communicate. Maybe they were not active on social media in the first place. But it's something that happened. And what is scary, and we are going to discuss how this happened, because as you have seen in this story, there was no email, no phishing link, no notification, nothing. It's basically one day you're logged out and you just lost your most precious. And there are ways that they can do this, right? But imagine this happening to you. Now, you most probably don't have a long username, right? So you think you're safe, but there is a deeper, darker aspect to it that we are also going to discuss, because I think everybody is potentially at risk, and I'm going to explain why. So yeah, this bizarre, very bizarre and kind of creepy scenario that you see unfolding.
Yeah. So what we're talking about, especially, is novelty usernames. Maybe that is Twitter, a Twitter account that the name is just W or like a single letter, or it is something very distinct like Tennessee, for example. There was a guy, I'm looking at the article right here, who was swatted because people wanted his Twitter name, which was Tennessee. A 60-year-old Tennessee man died after he was swatted by people who wanted him to give up his Twitter handle. This was in April of 2020. So this does have real consequences, I guess. What a lot of people will find is that maybe they're harassed, maybe they're offered money, and in the end, obviously coerced in this case to give up one of these novelty names. Now, even stepping outside this bizarre realm of swatting people over a username, Urban, and people value these things quite a lot, right? It's their reputation. Maybe they're playing an online video game which has only a certain amount of usernames that can be created, and they really want this one because it is their identity. Like, this is their pride and joy for 6 hours every time that they use it every day. Beyond this, there is a kind of normal world where people trade these things. Twitter has talked about the idea of raising money. It's not a very big money making business. They've talked about having bidding on usernames. Elon Musk famously took somebody's name who was just X, right? They just said, hey, this is ours now. Of course, if you're using a username from a company, you are renting it, that's technically their property. Now, that's a scummy move to take somebody's username like that, but it is important to realize that you are renting this name. And just like you can be banned from the service, you can have that username taken as well. And so Telegram also has a way to sell user accounts. In fact, there's a website called Fragment where you can bid on usernames. I think they have their own cryptocurrency or something. And so there's a regular world of this kind of trading that goes back and forth. Just tell people, Urban, a little bit about this not so underground necessarily marketplace for usernames and things of this sort.
Yeah, so like with anything in life, right? If there are people willing to trade, you're gonna have a market. And in 90% of cases, maybe even more, everything just goes well, right? You have someone who has an old username, they don't use it, they go in one of those alternative marketplace, they sell it, they get the money, and no one is hurt and everybody is happy. So it's something that is, I would say, common in virtually every single forums and like public website where people can interact with each other. I remember in the end of the 90s, early 2000, when I was part of a hacking community and we had like a bulletin board system where, we could chat and create topics and etc. And then there was, like a space called Marketplace. And you could just go and say, look, this is my old account. I want to sell it. I don't want to be part of this community. And then, you find someone to match your offer. And I would say there is nothing inherently wrong with that. Some platforms do it in an official way, like Telegram. However, when it starts to become creepy is when you basically switch to the other side, right? When you start to coerce people physically, to harass them. And look, if someone doesn't want to give the username, I think they should be allowed to keep it. Yeah, it's something that is common. Thankfully, it's in most cases, it's okay. But what we have also seen nowadays that is also something of concern is, okay, you don't have a novelty account and you don't think you're a target for this. But what you might have is an age account, right? It's an organically grown account that took some time, to establish. It was established with your identity, or maybe it's your online persona, but like it's something that was completely organic. The followers you got, they are high quality followers because you got them from friend and family and people following you. And what we have seen, like scammers, secondhand market for username, not just to get, like your example, like Tennessee, but also to simply get age account. And then what they do is they try to trick you in one way or another. And we're going to discuss all the technical details. And then once you lose it, what they do is they basically remove all your content, right? They purge the account completely. They wait some time, and then they prepare it for what they had in mind, which could be, promoting some crypto pump and dump, could be for some political campaign we have seen this being used, and all kind of things out of this.
Things like Wikipedia profiles, and probably that's against the terms and services of Wikipedia to be selling profiles. I'm not sure, but something like that, if it has a lot of edits on it and it has a long history, that's actually quite a valuable thing, because on Wikipedia, if you have a larger edit count, then you, in some cases, have more functionality, right? You can engage in certain things that others can't. And you also have the social clout that is really important on Wikipedia, where somebody who has a longer history, more edits, is considered more authoritative in social scenarios. So there's a lot of things going on in these sorts of realms. So just a few lessons we've learned thinking about this is some tactics that people can deploy to protect themselves. I would say number one, avoid novelty names if you can. And that includes, by the way, whatever new service you're signing up for. It might be tempting to take the most novelty name so that you're kind of staking your claim. And there's value to that, but there's also a risk. So consider something that is not as novel, right? Because that could be taken from you later on. You might get harassed and coerced to give it up. Obviously, two-factor authentication on all of your accounts. Now, ideally, you're using a unique username, a unique email address, even if that's a temporary email address, which maybe you shouldn't be using for very important accounts because those services could go away. 2FA, though, very important to be using that. Obviously, a password that you don't use on other services as well. So a good random password. So obviously lock your account down as much as you can. There might be other things, Urban. Let's say that somebody was expecting, just not necessarily in terms of somebody coming off after their novelty name, but let's say that somebody suspected that, let's say their Twitter profile was going to come under attack. What are some things that you would do to mitigate such attacks?
So certain companies, and the two that come to mind is Protonmail and Google, they have a certain program is, in many cases, for journalists and human rights activists, but I think pretty much anyone can enroll. I'm not sure the one about Google, but the one for Protonmail is called Sentinel, I think. It's a special thing. It's basically like an extra protection on top of your account to lock it down even further. And that could include things like, okay, now they want you to use an authenticator like a YubiKey or some kind of 3FA, but it's basically like one step further. And often in those programs where you can extra lock down the account, it's possible to use things like logs, so that suddenly the company is sharing its log with you and you can see where the people are trying to connect from, so you can review every activity. You can check if it was really you from your IP address or some third party that you don't recognize. I'm not so sure about what it changed, but I could imagine that if the company suddenly sees a request about changing your username, if your account is under that program and that special protection, they might have a second thought. They might do extra checks. So this is also worth exploring if the platform you're using is doing that. And for instance, I think with Telegram, if you enable 2FA, even if you have access to the phone number, you cannot log into the account. You can create, I think, a new account and maybe it destroy the old one. I'm not so sure about this, but I'm pretty sure you cannot access the other account. So there are sometimes ways that you can like really lock things down in a way that makes it almost impossible for anyone to take it over. So that's one of the strategy. Another one that can work as well is, you said about avoiding novelty. Yes, that might be an advice, but there is also the branding and the marketing that goes with it, and some of the prestige of using such a username. And maybe a possibility could be to switch your account to a business account and maybe even register an LLC at this name and do like a trademark or something. And then you also get a bit more protection, legally speaking. because now suddenly it's a business account. And now suddenly it's the name of a business and not just your name. And by the way, you can name your business however you want, right? You know, if your username is like very specific, you could just call your business like this, and that would work. And you could make, you know, an LLC or some kind of structure. And there again, you would often those business accounts, they have much more strict lockdown policy, and they're also harder to transfer because now it's tied to a commercial entity. But I will say that sometimes all of this is not enough.
Other strategies might include being diversified across the internet. So let's say, I hope if you're listening, your entire brand is not on one platform. But there are some people, Urban, where Twitter is basically that's their only place. And that is very foolish. You should be funneling people to your own website as much as possible. Have a email service where you have a newsletter. At least you can communicate with your followers if everything else went down. Don't be using something like Linktree. Linktree censors. It's first of all a rental service, and they also censor. They've censored BitChute links, for example. So I don't recommend a Linktree, but have your own website, have multiple accounts, be diversified across the internet. So if one shuts down, then at least you have others. In terms of avoiding swatting, the way that swatting works is if people know your home address. So if you're giving out your home address to all the places that we've endlessly talked about and I talk about in my book, etc., Watchman Guide to Privacy, then you need to be slowing that down, if not completely stopping that activity. And the same goes for your phone number. You need to be very cautious about which phone number you give to which service. And so these are just a few other tips. But it seems, Urban, that sometimes things can just get even worse. Do you want to continue your thought there?
I will add one thing to what you mentioned, and it's all very good advice. But, you know, we have lessons that we can learn from the dark web, right? Because on the dark web, websites come and go, you know, people rug pull each other. It's a very chaotic environment. And you're never sure that, you know, your account on this darknet market or on this hidden service is going to still be available. You know, the website could be shut down at any moment. You know, it's an ever-flowing environment. And how did people solve it, right? How can you retain somehow your identity across all the shutdowns and the taken down and, you know, the different platform? And what we have seen is people use PGP. You know, it's like publish your PGP fingerprint, and we did an entire episode about PGP. You don't have to use PGP to encrypt all your email, although if you use ProtonMail, it will do it for you. But, you know, you could also use PGP as a way to regain control of your identity, because then you could prove that this new account that you created is indeed you. Because now you can sign a message that say, look, this account was shut down and I lost access to it. And that is, by the way, PGP, you truly own it, right? You truly own your keys. It's a bit like Bitcoin in a way. Like, it is impossible for scammers, unless they have access to your key, to generate a signature that match what you published. And I think it's a good thing to have as a backup, as like an ultimate backup, that if everything else fail, you could use this to rebuild your identity somehow. So this is just the one thing I wanted to add. Now, yeah, when it goes further, I think the most scary is that sometimes there is a mole in the organization, right? In the social media itself, that is going to basically, it's basically like a corrupt person. And one way they earn their money is to basically sell remote access or like remote services. So imagine, and we are not going to give any names because this is a bit controversial, but you're welcome to do your own research. Imagine you're, you know, a user of a certain service and you build reputation, you know, you have one of those novelty unique names. There have been instances, and there is more and more coming with the time that goes on, about the technical support itself of the company, or one of the developer inside a company that basically access the admin panel and then change your data. And there is really no way to protect yourself against this. Because, as you said, Gabriel, if someone inside the companies want to change the actual data that is in the database, there is nothing you can do. With some exception, like Protomail, where they use Signet, like PGP, where this would not be possible, this would force reset the account. But you could still lose the username, right? So they might not have access to your data, but they would still be able to potentially force reset the username. And that, I think, is really, really scary, because it means that even if you do everything right, you can still lose access to it. Yeah, I mean, it's devastating. If you search a bit around, if you search like OG username and username stolen, you will see endless example of this happening. And this is not just like, if you believe like rogue employee, it's like, oh, but this is just a username. There is also a case of people in like phone provider that are corrupted and will swim swap you. This can have all sorts of consequences. It's not just for username. You can have like this kind of corruption and on all kind of service. And the way it works is, in many cases, it's like a hidden Telegram group. Often this is done on Telegram, and you kind of need to know a bit how to get in. And then once you're in, they advertise their service. They say, okay, we can, take over any account. We can ban an account. We can reset an account. We can do like all of this. It's like a menu. You choose, okay, I want this, and then they will ask the details. And yeah, they might or they might not do it. Now that's another thing, right, that we are going to see about the scams that happen. But yeah, that's in short how it works. And there is no interaction from your side. And from the side of the, let's say, the bad guys, there's also very limited interaction. You just basically hire like a digital mercenary to do it for you. And in many cases, they know exactly how to do it. They know exactly all the right forms and stuff. And yeah.
You are an artist, Urban, and you have been approached by one of the scammiest industries in the history of the world, which is the NFT movement. By the way, speaking of the great scams surrounding the crypto, Web3, and adjacent things, there's a good website called web3isgoinggreat.com, which exposes how almost all of the projects and services in the crypto, Web3 movement are scams. Almost all of them. Almost none are legitimate and worthwhile. And one of the great scams has been the NFT movement. Certainly, in my opinion, maybe you don't feel so strongly about Urban, but talk about some of the scams that you have seen, and maybe even people who have approached you for being an artist in the NFT craze.
I think just like anyone who fall down the crypto rabbit hole and Bitcoin, and you want to find ways to maybe earn it. And I wanted to be an artist, right? I wanted to make art. And one of my ideas was maybe I could sell my art for cryptocurrency and then just earn my living like this. There are, all kind of Telegram groups that you can go, all kind of communities online that you can find yourself into. And then once you get there, it's basically like a bulletin board, and you have like, oh, I'm doing this and this and this. What about you, etc. And what I noticed is something like 99% of people who wanted to do art, and the people offering their art service, were about creating NFT pump and dumps. And this goes from, hey, I will create your website and white paper, right? So for those not familiar, the white paper is, I think it's an overused term, but it's like, oh, this is how this super mega crypto incredible project will work. And it's just like tech mumbo jumbo in, again, most case. Then you had people doing the scammy website that is either going to steal or promote and pump and dump it, or try to get your passphrase, like all the combination and variation you can imagine. And then there were the artists that would create, oh, okay, so they're going to have an airdrop, and they are going to have like cards, and then there is like, I don't know, there is the magician card and the princess card, etc., etc. And they were looking for people to draw them, right, to make them. What's also interesting is once you are into those community, they also try to scam you. Like they all scam each other constantly, and it's really very toxic. And I had example where they're like, oh, we're gonna make a video game with NFTs and stuff like this, and then they want to recruit you, but then they sent a fake video game that has a crypto drainer. And if you don't know what a crypto drainer, bear with me. So they send you this, quote unquote game, and then they say, oh, as part of the interview process, you have to try out our game and you have to solve this. And now when you install the game, it launched the crypto drainer. And as its name indicates, now all your cryptocurrency and Bitcoin is gone because it hacked your computer and accessed your hot wallet or something along the, or, your MetaMask. Or so it was really, it's like very toxic. And if you go to conference, I've been to NFT conference, not many, but I've been there. There's also all this quote unquote insider knowledge, that there was a guy who I was just discussing, oh, I'm an artist and I like to do this and that. And the guy was like, oh, do you know this new token, the big moon something something? They're gonna have a free airdrop, baby. Do you want to? And I was like, oh man, I'm not interested in that. I'm sorry. But they try to make it look like, oh, it's gonna be big. And yeah, it's just weird, this like complete scammy thing. I was also trying to recruit artists for my own project and my own video game idea. And they were then trying to add scam on my own project. They were like, oh, but we could add tokens and we could have this and that. And yeah, so it was a very bizarre experience. And again, most people don't realize, but next time you find a very sleek, very well-designed project that seems to be serious, think about those hidden marketplace where you can just buy that, have basically the logo and the name of your project put on it so that it looks like you did it, and then you just pump and dump it, and that's it.
Definitely. And you and I spend a good bit of time looking around the internet, and part of the internet is Telegram. And Telegram has a lot of scams. It turns out that the people running a lot of these platforms who can have collected a lot of data, who are sifting through this data, don't seem to like to stop the scammers, right? They certainly have the ability to, but they don't like to stop the scammers because I think they're much more interested, as you have pointed out, in just collecting this data. And so people are scammed all the time on Telegram. I mean, I would imagine the amount of money scammed just from something like Telegram on any given day would be enough to solve, poverty in some region of the world for a period of time. I mean, it's we're talking a lot of money. We get messages from people all the time. I'm right now courting somebody who's probably a scammer right now, and I'm just going to see where this goes, collect information, etc. And by the way, you're great at playing the game with these people, Urban, and you've also caused certain of these scamming websites to crash. Let's just say, which I think is very honorable. I salute you. I'm sure everybody listening who's reasonable would salute you as well. Talk a little bit about some of the scams that you see on Telegram, and yeah, how you interact with these people.
I guess due to the group I'm in is mostly Bitcoin support groups, right? Like various wallets. And if you go to any of those wallet support group, whatever it's, Sparrow or Stack Wallet, Cake Wallet, any, usually you have tons of scammers. Maybe even sometime the majority of people are there scammers. And as soon as you ask one question, you're gonna get bombarded of people trying to quote unquote help you, and they are not, right? Trust me, they are not. No admin from any serious cryptocurrency wallet, Bitcoin or not, they will never write you personally.
The people who need to hear that, Urban, are not listening to this show right now.
You would be surprised. You would be surprised sometimes who gets scammed. But anyway, so those developers are busy and they won't write you in DM. But usually what happens is if you fall for one of those tricks, they will try to move you away from the group, and they will try to have you either enter your seed phrase or send them money somehow, or some kind of way that they access your hard-earned money. We have, by the way, if you're interested to see all the ways you can lose your cryptocurrency, we have an entire module on Escape the Technocracy in the Bitcoin course, where we go with every single scam and every single way we could think of where you could lose your money. So if you're interested, you can just go there, buy the course, and you will see. But when this happened, right, it got me thinking, what is their stack, right? How could I maximize damage? And how could I somehow stop them? Now, I've tried a bunch of stuff, and most of them don't work. I try to report them on Google. Because sometimes you're able to extract their email address if they did not configure the website properly, which is it's quite funny to see. And I've tried, to report it to Gmail. I've tried to report it to the hosting company that they're using, and most of the time it's like, no one cares, which is sad. So one new strategy that seems to work is, if they want seed phrase, right? The whole idea is to get seed phrase from you. What if I just generate seed phrase and I give it to them, right? And if it's valid seed phrase, well, they have to load the seed phrase somehow, and they have to check if there is money. And you would be surprised how those people are really not so sophisticated, A lot of what they do is manual. Typically what happens is, when you enter your words on a website and you click submit, it often then send them an email or a notification or some kind of in some kind of way, and then they manually type in all the words into their own wallet, and they just try to import it and to empty it. So none of this is automated, and automating it would actually require, to have a Bitcoin node running to load the wallet. Like, it would require a lot more resource. So yeah, imagine now if you have a tool that could somehow generate hundreds of thousands of valid Bitcoin seed phrase and then send them in a very short amount of time. I won't say more, but I think you can have an idea on what this can do on an operation like this. But I have to say, recently I noticed that they started to introduce CAPTCHA, and they started to introduce Google CAPTCHA to stop this kind of stuff. So it's interesting that they are evolving, and that they are kind of forced to protect their page in different ways.
Let's get a little bit more blue collar, Urban. There are tractor companies, which these days are, and tractors these days are very sophisticated pieces of machinery, and they're highly computerized, as are most vehicles and machines these days. You told me about this interesting fact that a lot of these tractors from big brand name companies have limitations on what you can do with their tractors. And people have found some interesting ways to get around them. And this kind of leads to the unusual things that one can find on the internet, including marketplaces and things of this sort. Paints a picture of this strange world of jailbreaking tractors.
Yeah, so again, a market you wouldn't believe exists. We all have in mind, the tractor that maybe our grandparent or grandma had at the farm, which was a very simple mechanical machine, and you put some kind of gasoline in it, and it just runs. And, like, farmers, they are no bullshit people usually, because they are under a very tight, very time constrained operation. If you do not cut your grass at the right time, you might lose, because now there is too much humidity or not enough sun. It's just, everything has to work, and you don't have time, to like fiddle with technological problem. Like, it has to work. And now we see that, in modern tractors, you have all kind of stuff that are here to quote unquote help the farmer. So you have things like GPS modules, and then you can assess based on the weather if this was like a good or not, if it's the good time to do the harvest, or on which portion of your property you can do the harvest. So you have like all those things, and this is again very useful. But you have the darker side of this, which is now we exactly know what the farmer are doing. And the problem there is that sometimes those manufacturing company, they will force farmer into all kind of weird scheme. For instance, you cannot fix the tractor yourself, but you need to call a certified specialist. And of course, the certified specialist might not be available. So that costs you money, that can cost your crops, because you cannot harvest them. You have, if they are using diesel engine, which most of them are, you have this AdBlue that is used, to reduce emission. And sometime, well, it can run out of AdBlue, and it can also sometimes not work properly. And then they basically restrict the tractor for emission purpose, because now, oh my God, you're polluting too much. So now you're left with a tractor that doesn't quite work, not because of a technical reason, but just because, you're lacking one of the product that is, and it's not technically required, right? The tractor will just work fine without it, right? Diesel engine will just work fine without it. They have worked for more than 100 years, so they don't require this. It's a nice to have, but it's not required. And yeah, and now you're left with a brick. And again, your corn, your potatoes, your whatever are there, and they must be harvested. So you could think, okay, where does this lead us, and how does this relate to Telegram groups? Well, you do have, first of all, second-hand tractors, and especially mechanical tractor, before all of this digitalization bullshit, that are now worth more than a brand new tractor, just because of the simple fact that you can buy third-party pieces to fix them, right? So that's one thing. But I've also seen there are now modules that you can plug to your tractor so that you can reclaim control of your own machine. And let me repeat this, right? You bought the machine with your money to work for you, to help you harvest various crops, etc. You are feeding people. This is extremely important. We cannot afford to not have efficient and well-functioning farming operation. If you don't have that, you have starvation and countless debt. We have seen this over and over. So now you're bothered by all those weird, completely artificial constraint, and you can buy, unlocking modules where you plug them into the digital computer of your tractor. And sometimes there is even better interface that now your machine is really working for you, and you can have access to the debug panel through Bluetooth for your phone, and you can see exactly how it's performing. You can do the diagnosis yourself and all of this. And I think it's extremely interesting.
Very intriguing indeed. And obviously, I believe as you do, and probably a lot of the listeners do, that if you purchase something that is yours, you purchased it, you should be able to do what you want with it. Of course, as we know, Urban, we do live in the legal industrial complex.
Everybody out there who is listening to it, if you look at manufacturing company, the number one thing they say is, oh, we don't prevent farmer from fixing the tractor. They can change the LED light. But if it's too complicated, maybe they don't have maybe they don't know, maybe they're not certified. So first of all, it's bullshit, right? Farmers have been fixing their own material for maybe thousands of years at this point. They are more than capable to fix it. They often know better because they are using this every single day. So that's number one, right? And they know that if they don't fix it properly, they might just die, right? Or they might wreck their harvest. Like, it has serious consequence to them. Number two, I'm the owner of a very old oscilloscope machine. Now, we don't have to go in detail what an oscilloscope machine, but it's made by a big brand that still exists to this day. And they were selling those, and it's a patented product, right? Back then, it's one from the 70s. And I should take a picture to put on Escape the Technocracy website in some kind of blog post. Even though, it was made by a big company that still exists to this day, so they didn't went bankrupt. The thing was patented and copyrighted. It came with a full instruction on how you can repair it yourself, right? So in this machine, there is a full manual of several hundred pages. It's like a Bible explaining you how it works, and it explains you what you can debug and how you can do it. And this was before the internet. This was before app on your phone. This was before all of this, but they included that because they were expecting you should be able to repair some of your stuff. So this was normal. A few decades ago, this was completely normal. And I still keep this big book, even though I could find it online, because I show it from time to time to people. Because I find it's funny, you can have big companies that do amazing products, and they can be very easy to repair. So do not let the excuse that they use to think that this is for your own good. It is not. It is not. It is to prevent you from owning your own thing that you paid with your own money.
Those are great words to end on. And so for the listeners, please, if you like these Torchlight chats, please do share them. An easy thing you can do is go and share the link to this particular episode with 5 people that you know. Give us some feedback somewhere. Rate us on your podcast player. Easy, free stuff that you can do. And of course, you can always visit escapethetechnocracy.com and all this good stuff as well. So thank you, Urban, and we'll see you next time. Hey, thanks for listening. Look, I could use your help real quick. If you could share this, engage with me in some way, leave a review anywhere. This really helps me to break the technocratic shadow banning that is happening with my brand. And of course, if you really want to escape the technocracy, go to escapethetechnocracy.com. Privacy tutorial series, books, consulting, and of course, you can leave a donation. Thank you very much.